Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark. Today, I'm honored to have with me Lawrence Lerner. He is the CEO of Pythia, the marketing lead over at RChain, and Nash Foster. He is the CEO of Pyrofix, and they are the guys behind the development of RChain. So, guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, I think before the best place to start here really is, what is RChain? Can you guys give us the elevator pitch?
You want to go first, or?
Yeah, sure. So RChain is, a blockchain platform that's built on the observation that current platforms are having trouble with security and scalability, and it's designed to be both secure, scalable, and sustainable in the long run by using a smart contracting language that allows people to express their intent more clearly, so they won't have as many bugs. Using a proof of stake algorithm so that we don't have to spend as much energy to sustain the network, and then building it out on top of a next generation sharding architecture that will allow us to scale to the moon.
Cool.
And it will be concurrent by design.
Very interesting. It's the proof of stake, proof of work debate is certainly an interesting one. I know there's a lot of other projects that have come out recently, and they're going proof of work. They say, well, it's got that 10 years of provability, whereas proof of stake methods, we're not sure if they're going to be secure enough in the long run. What do you guys say to that?
Well, the proof of work algorithm that we're going to use is based on the Casper working group's technology. So we're very sanguine that it's going to be correct by construction, which means that the algorithm has been built with the security constraints in mind, with a deep understanding of the kind of economic security that you're trying to get from your consensus algorithm, and that there will be proofs that go along with the algorithm to demonstrate that it actually implements what we want.
Proof of work is just unsustainable in the long run. And there's more depth to it, and there at the end we'll give you all the GitHub and links to social media so that your viewers can follow on.
Okay, great. Now, who do you see as being your target market for RChain? What are the potential use cases for RChain?
Well, certainly developers we want more than anything else, because they're going to build things. Use cases anywhere, whether it's highly scalable, complex, insurance, identity, things around exchanges where there's lots of concurrency, many transactions per second. It's got to be scalable and secure. Those are the things where there's lots of use cases. I mean, I could list about 20. I've got 2 investments we're going to close and about 9 more in the pipeline. And I'm sure Nash is working on a number of things that he can talk to.
Wow, great. That's really exciting to see that there's so much interest in it. It's really good. Now, what about scalability? Obviously, this is a big conversation in the cryptocurrency space, mainly because of Ethereum's lack of ability to scale. Currently, I know there are a lot of clever minds all around the world working on trying to make Ethereum scale better. But what is your proposal to improve scalability?
Well, for us, scalability really has 2 different components. On the smart contracting side, we've got a new language called Rholang, and it's based on, it originates from some work by a guy named Lerner, who developed something called the pi calculus, which is a model of computation that's inherently concurrent. Contrast that with languages like JavaScript or Solidity or what have you. Those languages are based on von Neumann machines, where at best you can bolt concurrency onto the side. But in general, we have a lot of trouble reasoning about how concurrent systems would actually work. So that's one aspect. The concurrency of Rholang then gives rise to our sharding architecture, which we call namespaces, which essentially allows groups of validators to validate transactions differently based on Lawrence has got the light show going on over there.
It's got a motion sensor.
Yeah, so namespaces allows different groups of validators to validate transactions based on which transactions interact with each other, rather than just doing static shard assignments, for example. That will allow us to have many more validators participating in generating consensus without those validators having to interact with each other on a large scale, right? So we have a small group of cross namespace validators at the top that are chatting with each other, and then lots of little separate namespaces at the bottom that are mostly doing work within themselves. And that architecture scales very nicely. It's very similar to architectures that we've seen scale at places like Google and Amazon. So we're very confident that the combination of those two on the language side and then on the operational side are going to give rise to an architecture that can scale as large as we need it to.
Very interesting. And so what's the current transactions per second that you're testing at?
Well, we haven't launched our testnet yet. That's coming later this summer. But our target for this year is about, roughly 40 to 50,000 transactions a second. We essentially want to be competitive with global financial networks like VisaNet and things like that. And we think that's realistic. We don't see any inherent reason why that would be impossible at this point. So we're hoping to demonstrate that when we launch the testnet later this year. But you'll have to stay tuned for specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and as the project moves forward, I suppose, and we go past testnet and mainnet, what do you see as the upper ceiling being based on your current projections?
Well, I spent 6 years on the SRE team at Google, and when you build an architecture correctly, the upper ceiling is really based on how much hardware you throw at it. And so the real question is the extent to which this blockchain technology needs to be adopted by business to get work done. Our intent is to build something that's sufficiently scalable and sustainable that we can grow the network to support all the transactions that are needed. If we can, get done what we believe needs to be done, then I think that's very viable. Certainly, we don't view the blockchain as fundamentally limited by, any physical constraints that are of any particular interest.
Okay.
And once you get above that number of transactions, you're in uncharted territory anyway. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity. It's about making them meaningful, robust, and secure. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to 40,000. From there, then things get really interesting.
I absolutely agree is that we haven't really seen the iterations of this yet. Everyone's developing 20, 30, 40, 50,000. The guys in EOS that we're going to have 100,000 guys at EOS. We're going to be infinite. No one's got there yet. No one's actually put that into play. No one's actually has that much business on their blockchain. In Ethereum, they've got 15 transactions per second, let's say. And it's kind of been enough for them. Yeah, it gets a bit expensive sometimes, but the pool always clears out. Cryptocurrencies have not reached that point yet, so we shall have to see how it all plays out, but certainly it sounds very, very promising as far as scalability is concerned. Now,
yeah,
I wanted to
for what
go ahead.
For what it's worth, the reason that the traffic hasn't scaled beyond 15 transactions a second isn't because of lack of demand. We've talked to, and Lawrence can speak to this in a lot more detail, but we've spoken to a lot of startups over the last year who basically said, we built on Ethereum's testnet. We tried it out. We played around on the mainnet a little bit. It never came anywhere close to meeting expectations. And now we're just sitting back and waiting for something to arrive that even has a chance of delivering the kind of infrastructure that we need for our dApps. Those guys are out there. And as soon as the demand gets unlocked, I think it's going to be, just a crazy rush.
It's going to be like the old days of the internet. Everybody's going to want to get on it. Entrepreneurs, enterprises, investors who are looking to build companies. I've got half of our investments are companies looking to pivot or refactor from their existing technology.
There you go. Very interesting. Now, I wanted to ask about a little more detail about Rholang, because isn't that going to be a barrier for developers? I know that Ethereum has Solidity. There's some other contract platforms that have developed their own languages as well. Won't this be a barrier towards getting new developers to come in? They'll have to learn yet another new language. Wouldn't it have been more advantageous to use Java or something like that, for example?
Developers are the people who learn programming languages for a living, right? So asking them to learn a new programming language is sort of like motherhood and apple pie. Will it be difficult? Here's what I will tell you. I think it's going to be different. There are going to be some concepts that developers are going to have to acquire that they haven't worked with before. Rholang is based on the Rho calculus, which is a reflective higher order model of computation, and most people don't know what they're looking at when you put it in their hands. But the good news is that the entire model of computation fits on a 3x5 index card, right? There's only like 8 reduction rules, and the Rholang language has a handful of desugaring rules to make programming in it more convenient, but the basic concepts in Rholang are pretty straightforward to explain to a guy who's been doing this stuff for a while, and they're easy for kids to pick up. So we're actually very eager to get our language into people's hands. Last month, we released the first software development kit, which allows people to begin playing with Rholang as a programming language. So if you're interested in it, you can go to developer.rchain.coop. You can download the SDK, and you can start fiddling around writing Rholang programs right now, and breaking the alpha version of the code today and see how that works. I personally think that people are going to be extremely excited. We haven't seen a fundamentally new kind of programming language emerge in the field in a number of years. This one is unique and different and exciting, and it provides access to a technology, the blockchain, which is also unique and different and exciting. And so I think that in combination, those two things are going to be very powerful and very, very fun for people.
And those are really important things. When we went to object-oriented programming and then functional programming, it wasn't just a better language, it was a different way of thinking. So building the architects and teaching people to do that from a Pythia standpoint, that's what we're doing. And that's where we're going to see the real advantage beyond just lots of transactions per second and sharding and namespaces. We're going to be looking for people who become true blockchain architects, especially RChain architects. That's going to be exciting, and you're going to see some very different types of programming.
Very interesting. I know there's a lot of competition out there. I mean, what I guess is the strategy to get the developers to come over and to develop on RChain?
We've got an open community. We're a cooperative. The co-op itself is a 501c3 Washington State cooperative. So for $20 lifetime membership, you can be somebody who steers the direction. You have a voice in how the development is done. We've got meetups set up around the world: Seattle, San Francisco, Austin, Salt Lake, New York, Clearwater. London is coming online. I just spoke to some folks in Moscow who are interested in starting up one. We've got a thriving QQ channel with more than 1,000 people in China. The developers are excited for all of the reasons that Nash said earlier. This is a new thing for them to dig their teeth into. They've been bumping their heads on the ceiling of other languages. This is why they're going to join. And there's enormous participation on our Discord channel.
Awesome. Very cool. Now, multi-chain solution, is that just another word for saying sidechains? Lawrence is like, no, absolutely not, Lark. Excellent. Educate me, guys.
Well, I mean, it's early days, right? So one of the things that we have to work out during the early period of any new technology market is what the terminology is actually going to mean. So, in our view, RChain is fundamentally different because one of the things that it allows people to do is to come and go as they want with regards to the blockchain. It's possible to set up chains and then integrate them with RChain, and then after a while you can take them private again. You can build gateways very simply, and the process of doing sidechains is sort of baked into the heart of the architecture without needing a lot of special bells and whistles or a lot of the infrastructure that the Lightning Network is going to require, that kind of thing. So, from our perspective, we're sort of like, something that looks a lot like a sidechain ought to have been part of the infrastructure from the very beginning. And so that's what we've done. Does that mean we want to call it sidechain? No, I think that really misses the point, right? The point is that RChain allows different communities of people with different amounts of economic value to come together in a single blockchain to negotiate transactions between their software so that they can, whether it's deliver value in an application, or whether it's deliver economic value by clearing transactions economically. All of those things should be possible on the same blockchain using smart contracts, and that's what we're building right now.
Very interesting. And what about smart contracts on RChain? Will that be what I guess are the differences and similarities between smart contracts on RChain and smart contracts on Ethereum, for example?
Yeah, good question. So the smart contracting language on RChain is Rholang, which we've already talked a little bit about. So that's the number one largest difference right there. The other set of differences really revolves around how smart contracts on RChain are designed to be more granular and more, essentially easier to make correct, right? And most of the principles involved in RChain from the beginning have been mathematicians. And as mathematicians, we're sort of obsessed with correctness. And we've built a lot of technology into RChain that helps programmers guarantee that when they write a program, it does what they intended, rather than doing something surprising when other inputs are given to it, right? And that's one of the biggest differences between Rholang and programs written in Rholang, generally speaking, and programs written in nearly any other language that's out there, is the ability to make programs be correct by construction is fairly straightforward. It's also the case that RChain's smart contracts are much more granular. So our transactions are smaller and less expensive. So they run more granularly. There's increased concurrency between interacting smart contracts, and that will help the blockchain, feel faster and flow. There'll be more of a flow because transactions will complete more quickly and more rapidly, and you won't have to wait and guess about gas values nearly so much, and it'll be easier to plan and things like that. But much of that falls out of the same tooling that we built to ensure correctness.
Great. Fantastic. What about the token? What is the exact function of the token within the RChain ecosystem? And will you be burning tokens over time?
Like any other token, it's got an intrinsic value, and there's a value for the transactions, right? And I write about blockchain every day. If you don't have an earnable token, then you've got to kind of wonder what's the value and purpose. It doesn't just go up because people find a value. It's got to be tied to something in it. What are we tying it to? Millions of transactions every day and potentially every hour that it's being used. As for burning, when we voted on that, I forget, did we vote to burn them at the end of last year, some of them?
I think that there's very likely to be some amount of tokens burned in the future. The exact amount is unknown. The co-op hasn't decided that. It's also the case that, and depending upon who you talk to about token economics, some people advocate for there to be both sources of tokens, like what Lawrence is talking about, the tokens should be earnable, but also sinks to ensure that you can reduce supply in cases where you want to do that as well. I think the reality is that a lot of these questions are still, let's be frank, right? Token economics is kind of like being the central bank for the crypto economy. The central bankers haven't figured this stuff out, and they've been at it for 100 years, right? So, if it's going to take a little bit of time for people to figure out what the right approach is in order to create the kind of token economy on the blockchain that you want to have, in order to determine, do we want price stability? Do we like the volatility? What are the characteristics that people are looking for, and that sort of thing. The bottom line is that the rev is the token in which, initially speaking, you're going to pay for smart contracts. Just like Ether, it's going to be used to run contracts on the blockchain. And then you'll be able to create your own tokens so that you can experiment with different forms of token economy on RChain, just like people have been doing on Ethereum. And once we do that, I think we're going to be unlocking a lot of different possible applications and a lot of different demand for, experimenting like that.
Pretty cool stuff. And I want to expand, I guess, a little bit on the idea of the cooperative itself. Why choose to go with this kind of a model? Why a cooperative at all?
Well, Greg Meredith founded, the co-op on the idea that not only was there participation, but it creates an abundance mentality. Everybody gets a piece. Everybody's able to work on this. So we've all seen lots of projects that become hierarchical and run into issues because of that. Well, now we've got a truly decentralized community, and we're absolutely learning as we go along. Don't let us fool you into saying, "Oh yeah, we got it all figured out. We created a co-op." We did that. There are over 900 members today worldwide that
it's over 1,000 already.
Is it? Is it?
Yep.
Cool.
There you go. Wow, it's growing fast.
Yeah.
That are participating in over half a dozen live video hangouts just like this one, and get to have influence on how the project is going forward, how the ecosystem is being built, how partners come to us. So why did we do it? Because community comes first.
Really cool. I guess that's kind of a lead into my next question. Maybe you can bounce a bit off of that. But that was, looking at the team, looking at the website, looking at the team. It's small at the moment. It's not, great, amazing people on there, but still small. Are you hiring positions, or are there just a lot of people? 1,000 people in this community is really amazing. Are those the people who we're going to see doing development work? Can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so the co-op is hiring. I honestly don't know which positions they're open at the moment, but for most of the development work, RChain has brought PyroFX in to handle, finding and acquiring developers and putting them on the technology as we need it. And we're now up to just under 20 developers actively working on RChain full time. We're constantly hiring. Our target is closer to 40 than 20, and the types of folks that we're looking for in particular are folks that have a mathematics background, functional programming. All of RChain is written at the moment in Scala, which lends to that functional programming mindset. And so those are the kinds of people in particular that we're looking for at the moment. I know that there are also a lot of roles that are available within the co-op, and then within the community. What we do to integrate the community is that we have a bounty system set up. So both the community and the dev team and members of the co-op's management team work together to assign bounties in token bounties for different kinds of tasks that we would like to have done, both on the development side and on like the marketing and PR side and other aspects like that. People self-select for the tasks that they want to do, and then they work them off, and then once they're complete, they get paid a little bit under the bounty program. That program has been very successful at recruiting people out of the membership pool. So anybody that's interested, it's like Lauren said, it's a $20 lifetime membership. You can sign up, get access to our Discord, and go to town. And there are a number of people who spend a fair amount of time working through that program at the moment.
Yep.
Very cool. Now on the website as well, there are some pretty cool advisors listed. Can you kind of tell us what are the role of the advisors at the moment?
Well, let's talk about probably the most notable, which is Vlad Zamfir from the Ethereum project. He and Greg Meredith, along with Vitalik, have been working on Casper and how it's going to be implemented. And again, this is one of those differences in the blockchain and RChain community. They've been highly collaborative. It's all been out in public. Monday is the weekly Casper stand-up. And so Vlad's been a very strong advocate, not only on that, but in our governance forum as well. And how should co-op and the RChain itself be governed? So those are the kinds of people who are coming to the forefront to be part of the advisory team.
Yeah, don't forget Kenny Rowe. He's the COO of RChain, and he's been heavily involved in the MakerDAO project, which is a global project to put together open source tools for both Ethereum and other blockchains. So for example, those guys I believe were responsible for DApp. So you can go to DApp and you can get smart contracts that run on Ethereum to do things like multi-signature wallets and a bunch of other different functions. You can get your ERC20 token from them and then do your own customizations based on a code base that is reasonable and trustworthy. So guys like that, they have a huge influence on us, even if they're maybe not as well known as Vlad.
That's That's pretty cool too, though. It's like I said, there's some pretty cool advisors there, and if you actually read through the list and understand who those people are, you go, wow, actually these guys have some really amazing experience that they're, bringing to RChain, which is fantastic. Now, what about the interest in actually building on RChain? I know the test net is still coming sometime this summer. Obviously the main net is still a ways away, but I guess how is that coming along, and who is kind of reaching out and saying, hey, we see what you're doing, we're really interested, and we would like to build our Dapp? Do you have any examples of Dapps that might be built on RChain already?
It's insane. There are two identity companies that I'm taking investments in that are helping people figure out what's the next generation of how do you do things like zero knowledge proof? What's the minimum amount of information that you can send to someone? So for example, you go into a bar, you can assume that everybody that you meet is over 21. That's a small example of zero knowledge proof. So we've got companies like that. I know the Reflexive team is working on a music startup that's looking at how to do venues in a different way. I've got supply chain companies, game companies. I'm talking to large enterprises because that's a lot of my background, including, as Nash pointed out, some of the card brands that are looking to RChain to be their entry point into blockchain. There are literally dozens of companies. We invite everybody to come in, come to pythia.com, come to the co-op website, pitch your ideas, come to our Discord. We're looking for those folks, entrepreneurs, investors, and enterprise.
Cool. And what about the roadmap? How is the roadmap coming along so far? And what do you see as the biggest challenges being ahead for you to complete the milestones on the roadmap?
Yeah, great question. So our current roadmap is goes out through Q1 of next year. Our goal is to release something interesting and meaningful every month and a half. Now, it's not going to be the entire blockchain all at once, but we want to get, as we advance the code, we want to, get something into people's hands that they can take a look at and see that there's progress being made. We think that one of the key ways to differentiate yourself in crypto is to actually just deliver with consistency. So that's the real focus that we have as a dev team, is putting something together every month or two and getting it into the community's hands. So with that in mind, we released the initial version of our node, which does peer-to-peer networking and all those sort of hello and basic negotiations. That came out in December. In January, released the Rholang SDK. We should see an update to the node sometime in the next few weeks. There should be an update to the SDK shortly thereafter. And we're just going to continue to do that, where we release updates to pieces and add new features and functions as we go along. The reality is that the biggest challenges to us are integrating, a variety of new technologies that are sort of all revolutionary all at once. And that's a big, ask for any dev team. But we've got, the Casper consensus algorithm, we've got Rholang, we've got the namespace charting algorithm, and we want to be able to write it all in Scala and deliver it in a package that people can verify for themselves when they download it. So all of that stuff, there's just a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of those moving pieces still, are pieces that are involving active research, right? Whether it's, from Ethereum Foundation to RChain or wherever, people are still trying to figure out exactly how this stuff is going to get done. So our goal is to just deliver consistently as a software team, so that as the answers to those questions come in, we can slot the technology right in there and just make it available to the community to go right ahead with. And hopefully that's going to be a successful way to make a platform.
Cool. And recently you had a governance forum. Can you tell us, how does a governance forum work, and what were the results at the end of that governance forum?
4 days of really good discussion on bringing out what are the top level issues. We didn't solve everything, but it's the frameworks about how do you govern a co-op that's building, a global software platform. How do you govern that? So what it's done is broken down into different working groups that are going to go out and start figuring out some of these things. Nash pointed out things around gas pricing and how you stabilize the price. Should you stabilize the price? These are all super important things. No one has done this before. And it mirrors things in the physical world. So we're breaking new ground, and we're creating really interesting models for governance that can be used for other blockchains and taken into the real world.
Very, very interesting. Now, if people want to get involved in the RChain community, I'm going to put some links down below. But what's the best place for them to get involved?
Discord.
The Discord.
Come and join our Discord channel.
We've also got a great Telegram channel. It's another great place to go. If you slot in there and ask questions, they get answered pretty quick. If you want to engage the community, $20, jump in our Discord. We'd love to have you as a member.
Really cool stuff. As I mentioned, the links will be down below. Lawrence, Nash, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today and tell us what is RChain. It's such an exciting sounding project. We'll certainly be watching closely in the future to see how RChain is developing. I know we're all looking forward to see that testnet coming out. So happy developing, guys, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.